up, water cooler? I'm Tristan Linville, joined by one of the best guys on the planet, Michael Callahan. The both of us think manufacturing and technology is pretty cool, and we're going to make podcasts until you agree. So, Michael, are you ready for episode 17?
Absolutely. It's more than pretty cool. It is the coolest thing that ever existed because you have a computer in front of you. How to get there? Yeah. Manufacturing. Boom.
True.
Boom. By the way, I hope you enjoy my virtual background. There's some surprises behind me, Christmas presents, and I don't want my kids to see it because I know they're watching a podcast. So,
for sure.
Just keep, being safe here. Being safe.
Yeah. Well, my buddy, he was just traveling for work, and he was in Egypt, and so he did the whole walk like an Egyptian thing. And guess what he needs now?
What?
A chiropractor.
That's good.
But now that we got the bad joke out of the way for the day,
it's a bad joke.
Exactly. Exciting guest today.
Absolutely.
You want to hear who we got?
I do. It's like my background. I'm curious who's about to pop on.
All right. So the guest today is Tony, the worldwide machinist Gunn. What's up, Tony?
Gunn.
How you guys doing? That was a great intro, by the way. I usually have pretty loud and excited intros on my podcast as well, but you win. You win that award for sure, Tristan.
Yeah, it's just too early in the morning because I don't. Instead of sipping on a bourbon or something like what you do, I'm sipping on a water. Michael's probably got a coffee,
Coffee's done today.
We do coffee and tea on my show as well, for sure. If it's a morning show, we're not doing bourbon. I promise you.
Well, maybe we should. Maybe we should change that up.
And who am I to judge if somebody puts a little bourbon in their coffee? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'll never know.
Someone.
You'll never know.
I love it.
Tony, I feel like we should nickname you Top Gun just because you have an awesome last name.
And we might get in trouble with that.
That's where we're going with this podcast. It's going to be that good.
Well, let's do it then. I mean, who cares about what other people have done in the past and what patents might be out there and who we might get in trouble with?
Don't worry about those.
We do what we want.
All right, Tristan, I have a question for Tony.
Beautiful.
Tony, tell me a little bit about, on your shirt, MTDCNC, what is y'all's mission? What do y'all do? And what's it stand for?
I love this question because I think it's incredibly important. And the same thing you guys are doing right here, right now, Michael. You already said how cool it is. We're the water cooler, how cool manufacturing is. You already said your computer. You already did your boom thing. But you're right, and you're exactly right. And don't worry, with all conversations that you'll have with me, I talk far more than I probably need to. But I do eventually bring things back full circle to your question. But manufacturing is it runs the world. It really does. Without it, and I say this probably more times than people want to hear it, but I got to keep talking about it because there's a whole massive group of people out there that still see this as an invisible industry, or should I say, don't see it at all because it's an invisible industry. But manufacturing makes everything around us. I mean, I make this joke sometimes about your TV. When I grew up, I had to get up and turn the knob to my 6 stations and move the bunny ears around. I'm showing my age, of course, but move the bunny ears around that were wrapped in foil in order to make that TV work. And through the years, I've seen a progression as a Gen Xer where, to my convenience, I have more channels than a remote. I can just sit in my chair, sip my bourbon, if we're going back to that, and flip through the channels. And when I think about manufacturing, ultimately for me, although we make everything and we can do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and everything's touched by manufacturing one way or another, we can do 6 degrees of manufacturing. I think about it as making our lives better, honestly. At the end of the day, when I try to talk to people who don't care about this industry or how their phone was made or their computer was made or their TV was made or their car was made and all of these conveniences, I think about it as conveniences. I think about it as what has made my life better. Well, the remote, obviously, computers, planes, the speed of the planes, the safety of the planes. I go around the world for the last 15 years to over 80 countries, right? So I'm always on planes. The safety of cars. But as I'm getting older in my failed soccer career, I'm starting to get gout and bad knees, and I think about the medical industry and how they used to take these giant screws and drill them into people's knees. I'm like, holy crap, I don't want that. And how much better medical's come through time. And I think about all of this, because it all is from manufacturing. So back to your point and back to the importance of what MTDCNC does. MTDCNC was, in my opinion, a forward-thinking company, not in the sense of predicting the future as a whole, because if you think about the modern world, if you think about the hat that's on your head, the shirts we're wearing right now, the shoes on our feet, the cars around us, there's been influencers and video marketing. That's how YouTube turned into this conglomerate that it is right now. But there's been video marketing, there's been marketing in general, and influencers in these other industries for the longest time. As soon as Instagram was created, you had people with 1 billion followers on there just doing, selling stuff. And that's that world. But manufacturing is slow to adapt. We're traditional. We love a trade show. We love a handshake. We love a high five. We want to spend time touching and feeling. So we're slow to adapt. We've stuck with trade shows and magazines. And while a comfort zone can be okay, nothing grows there. And it's important to adapt modern technology. So MTDCNC back in 2008, 2007, around that time, thought we needed to adapt video content to manufacturing, which I completely agree with. But how can you do it sustainably and affordably for companies out there who are slow to adopt this type of technology, especially when it can sometimes come with an upfront price point that can be scary? You got camera equipment, you got hotels. We travel around the world. We're not doing it from our home studio in front of a green screen or in our own machine shop with GoPros everywhere like a reality show. We travel around the world to bring the shops to people. So how can that be affordable and sustainable? Well, you start thinking about the ROI of, per click, per view, I just made a video the other day, or I didn't make it. I shared a video the other day that was 3 years old, and it had such relevant content that the company I shared it for ended up selling 2 machines from it. Now, if you talk about ROI of your modern day magazines or a trade show, it's often dead after 3 months, whereas an ROI for video content. So the idea is, when I think about MTDCNC, is they adapted what everyone else had been doing into a traditional industry. We travel around the world to bring that technology to a platform where everyone can see it, because not everyone's going to make it to Japan or India or Mexico or the US, depending on if you're outside the US. Of course, that's where we are. And then we bring that technology in, and testimonials and successes and factories, to a unbiased, agnostic news channel, which I think is important for people to understand, because in manufacturing, much like yourselves, you are intelligent. I don't need to tell you to buy something. I don't need to convince you to buy something. I need to showcase and highlight the technology and the people who have successes right now and how they're creating that success, so that you can see that it exists and then decide if this is something you want to utilize for yourself. So that's where we are the largest agnostic global news channel for manufacturing, and MTD stands for Machine Tool Direct, and CNC most people already know, but computer numerical control.
I love it, man. That was awesome. It's interesting because last podcast we talked about how buying processes are changing, and one of the things we talked about was customers need to see it, right? We need to change the dynamic, and instead of it being this cut sheet that I hand someone, it's a more dynamic and let me touch and feel and figure out how it works. And this is in software, but it also applies exactly to what you said in the machine tooling world and the CNC world of, hey, if I'm going to spend probably thousands, if not millions of dollars on machining, I better figure out how it's going to work and be able to do a lot more and understand it than just the cut sheet that we used to have.
And if I may, Michael, just to elaborate on that, and I want to give you some time as well, Tristan. I know this is you guys' show, but when you think about how sales used to be done and how sales is doing now, I think about a funnel and a circle. So there's the funnel system of how sales used to be, where you go to a trade show, you collect leads, you had this database of leads, and it would funnel down where a salesperson would make an email, or someone inside internally would make an email. And the general rule is that only 5% of any said industry, but let's say 5% of manufacturing, because that's where we are in the buying mode. So 95% of the people we're emailing, calling, following up with, these people aren't ready to buy, and in fact sometimes find it annoying, and 5% are, but it was tough to find that 5% without sorting through all the weeds of the other 95%. There was this funnel system, and that was what everyone did. We knocked on doors, we made house calls, we wrote emails, we made phone calls. All of this was the funnel system. Now we have a circular system where that 5% is always rotating. And by being online, the 5% that's ready to buy can find people. And what I find most significant about that 5% who's ready to find people is a lot of companies don't realize that how much resources goes into selling. Even after in the funnel system, even after you call someone and they say, yes, I'm ready to buy, there's still a lot of work to be done, right? You still got to more or less sell the product. What's happening in the circular system is because you exist online, because there's videos of the foundation of the company, there's videos on technologies themselves, there's video on sales and service, there's videos on success stories, there's all of these videos online that the person who's now called you pretty much has done 90% of their research, and all they need to know is lead times and cost, right? And so a lot of that sales that people used to go into has been not removed, but lessened. So they're saving time because people have done their research diligently already. In fact, most people who make that phone call, they already know pretty much the answers they expect to receive because they've done their research. So sales is really evolving, and not everyone. We're now working, I think, in 5 different generations in one category right now, right? From the older folks that are getting ready to retire all the way down to the young generation that's really technology savvy, right? So we're catering to a broad span of how people buy and work. And I think video content is the best way to reach the majority of them.
Isn't the number 80%? 80% of the research is done before they get in touch with a sales rep.
I've heard that number before too, yeah.
And it's so true. And, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone articulate it as well as you just did on the sales, circle versus the funnel. Shoot, we got 2025 planning coming up next week. My sales team's about to hear all about this. But, it's just one of those crazy things. And I'm glad that, you kind of share this mission with us of putting content out there to celebrate really manufacturing, right? And yes, are Michael and I in the technology space? Yeah. But where do we come from? We came from manufacturing. We came from distribution. And, that's kind of where when you make these videos and your content, that's who you're celebrating. And so I know you came up from the shop floor. We came up from the shop floor. Like I got in by accident. I didn't intend to go build missiles, but I don't want it to be an accident in the future for the next kid coming out of college.
Yeah.
Like they should be excited to go into such an industry as manufacturing, especially in the United States where frankly we're behind. I mean, you travel the world, you could tell us how behind we are. So like what's your vision on getting that next generation to move forward and get excited about working in manufacturing?
Tristan, I absolutely love this question because I've always been, and this is probably going to sound bad, but I've always been a fence rider. And what that means is I've never 100% sat on one side and said, this is the way it's going to be, and dug my foot in the sand, and never on the other side either. I like to take patience, kindness, compassion, and understanding from all topics of conversation and apply them into what I hope to be a valuable opinion, right? So when we get into this topic, we have to also appreciate that we currently sit where we sit because there was a generation that believed in manufacturing and then we sent everything overseas. I too would be mad if I was taking care of my family and had a good job that I was proud of and that the country was proud of, and then within a year everything was gone. I'd be pissed off too. So if I'm from that generation, would I ever teach my kids or grandkids to be a part of something that's pissed me off, right? So we have to be fair about that. That's what's put us in this situation. But simultaneously, manufacturing is the backbone of every strategic and successful economy around the planet. So we have to bring it back. We have to pay attention. You said we're behind. We are, in our opinion, behind. We could be doing a lot better. But we're still second in the world. We're still second in the world, and we're still second in the world by a long shot over number 3, but second in the world by a long shot by number 1, too. China is number 1 in the world in manufacturing right now, and it's more than double or about double what we do here in the U.S. And then when you go to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it trickles down a little bit more. We're still dominant in the world, but you're right. We are traditionally have been more creative minded, where we'll invent something and then send it elsewhere to be manufactured for a less costly result, right? China was typically known as the leaders of reverse engineering. So they would go to a trade show where there was a sign that says no photos, no videos, and they'd photo and video the shit out of it. And you'd be like, do you not see that sign? Like, but that's I saw it all the time from trade shows around the world. Now they've come to a point where, as a general rule, on average, and I've said this number before, it's probably changed since I've done the research, but on average, the hourly wage is $4 less in Mexico than it is in China right now, which means that nearshoring makes a great deal of sense for us. And they've been focused on engineering for the longest time, so they have people for it too, which is an unusual balance, right? Mexico's done a wonderful job at that. So when we talk about nearshoring, reshoring, bringing it back, how do we get kids excited? I think we talk about things like robotics. I've had fun conversations with some friends out there, allocating it to video games and being a part of AI, additive manufacturing, these types of things. Talking less and less about the dull, dirty, dangerous, which still exists, of course, and it needs to. We need to open more foundries if we're going to be great again. Honestly, we need to figure out, and that's going to be a dangerous and dirty job. It just is. And some people love that type of work, and I love the people that love that type of work, and I've done that type of work. So if we're going to excite people and get people back into it, first, they need to find trust again. They need to find trust that this isn't a job for someone who's dropped out of school and can't get into a university. This is a job that actually currently has a better ROI than going to a university. For the lifespan of a career has a better ROI. Typically, you walk out of a trade school where either your company's paid for it, but certainly not 6 figures in debt like going to a university. So these are things that are beneficial: ROIs, confidence. We need to celebrate each other. We need to look at each other and realize that we are what's making this country amazing and everything around us. We don't need to look at other industries and go, oh, I wish I would have done that, but I was just a misfit in high school and got a 2.0 GPA and I didn't want to go. No. Manufacturing should be one of the considered top careers by every counselor that is in every high school. Now, how do we get this information to the kids? That's kind of where the gap is right now, honestly, Tristan, when you ask this question, is when I think about who can make this happen. Well, it's associations out there. If they want to maybe use some of their funding if the associations can come together, and I have a lot of friends in the associations out there, but if they can come together, these machine tool associations, and put together a fund to send your inspiring thought leaders out across the country to middle schools and high schools across the country and preach the good word of manufacturing. Excuse me. Preach the good word and just make awareness. Awareness is the first thing. Once awareness is there, the kids will figure it out on their own, but most of them don't even know that this career exists. But possibly even more importantly than that is when we get these kids together in these middle schools and high schools, we need to invite their parents. We need to invite their parents because we're not convincing just the kids. We're convincing the parents as well. So in a perfect world, how do we do it? Well, we keep doing what we're doing right now. We're obviously all three advocates. There's great podcasts out there doing the same thing. MTDCNC. We like to be entertaining and enjoyable. We are quickly growing. We went from about 40,000 subscribers about 2 years ago on YouTube to 150,000 now, and it continues to grow at an epic rate. We have other wonderful thought leaders out there. I try not to name drop too much because I always forget someone and I feel bad, but I could name drop about 20 people right now that are doing an amazing job. But ultimately, in my opinion, to truly make this change, we need to figure out how to find funding because education doesn't really have an immediate return, right? When we think about, if I'm going to give you money, I want a return on my investment right away and not 10 years from now. But education is a 10-year investment. And whether it's the government that does it, but some people don't rely on government, whether it's associations that does it, whether it's machine shops that donate $1,000 that come together that believe in this project, $1,000 from 1,000 machine shops is plenty of money to send someone around the country for a year or two, right? And then we have a momentum. Then we have a snowball. Then we're getting people excited. And I heard this number, and it doesn't have to be just women, but if 6% of women in the U.S. decided to join manufacturing, the skills gap is gone. The labor shortage is done. And if we went to all of these schools and we started, educating everyone from women, of course, and diverse, we need more diversity, but then your everyday person, much like myself as well, that knew nothing about it. And then let's bring in some veterans from the military as well who come back and don't think that they have a career opportunity. Let's bring them into it. Now we're getting into a place where we're adopting technology because we're kind of good at that. We're picking up on this automation thing. We're picking up on this AI thing. We're bringing this smarter factory into the U.S., which is important. But COVID and the skills gap made us do that and made us rethink how we're going to go to work. And then we need to embrace our nearshoring as well, because currently we don't have the infrastructure. If we brought all reshoring back immediately, we don't have the infrastructure to take care of it. So Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Costa Rica, these places have great manufacturing. Let's nearshore and reshore, and then let's figure out how to do this all simultaneously. It's not an easy project, and it's a whole lot of words, and I hope we can get there. But that's kind of my summary to your question.
One thing I've been thinking about, why Tristan and I love this so much is manufacturing has historically lived in the Stone Age. You were talking about, and actually it's funny because I think like 4 years ago I tried to do the little antenna when we were in an apartment, and I was like, maybe I can save some money. And now I'm sitting here watching YouTube TV on my phone. But I think that manufacturing's lived in the Stone Age, and that means they've dealt with what they had. So we're in the ERP space, and so in the ERP space, they've lived on AS400s or green screens. In the manufacturing world, they live on the same machines that they had 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And now all these new things are coming in. And so I think part of it for me is, to your point, how do we make it exciting? There's all these STEM toys. There's these STEM programs going on that are fantastic. And I think it's making that a great thing for kids to enjoy and adopt. And I love seeing it. And it's, my favorite thing that we do is going into a manufacturing plant and seeing how they make things. And I think getting kids into that is what we have to do.
I agree with you, Michael. And let's play the psychology game real quick. For me, coming from a machinist background, I always enjoyed seeing something that was raw turn into something of value. Mm-hmm. I've always thought that was a really cool thing. And to code these machines and make this raw material turn into something of value. Not everyone loves that. That's how my brain works, and I enjoy that. I think, honestly, to attract a broader audience is to showcase and build the bridge into things that either bring tears or chills or smiles, or if you ever give someone chill bumps, you've got them, right? That's what movies do. That's what music does. That's why we like our songs and we watch our movies, is so I get chills or I cry or I laugh and I'm a part of it. I think the greatest way is to build that bridge between a piece of raw material that the majority of people, unlike myself, don't care about. I care about that, to the successes. For example, I was recently in a school in New York, and they 3D printed this leg brace for a dog that had a broken leg and saved the dog's life. I was recently in a facility that helped a colorblind person see color. I was recently in a facility that was very defensive minded to help protect the country. I was in, I go into these. So what I think is there's an entrepreneurial spirit amongst the generation that's coming in right now that, for better or worse, totally up to every generation and every human being to decide on their own, but for better or worse, believes that they can and want to do something good for this world, right? So if this spirit exists, let's show them that they can do it through manufacturing. Even if you want to be a designer and make your own shoes, well, you got to make the molds. You know what I mean? You got to figure out how all of this stuff works. So in my opinion, we showcase the bridge between how it's done and how you can make the world better, how this product has made the world better, how you can help your parents, your grandparents, your animals, the forests around you if you want to save the world. All of these conversations can happen. For me, just give me a piece of raw material and let me turn it into something. But for the majority of people out there, let's give them hope. Let's give them inspiration and how they can do something through manufacturing to make this world better.
Yeah. I love it.
Great. I mean, coming from a defense manufacturing background, right? There is, and again, I didn't intend to get in. Actually, I told my dad, who he worked on nuclear missiles for 21 years in the Air Force, and I told my dad, I'm never working for the government. First job
Never
out of
say
grad
never,
school.
right?
First job out of grad school, I'm at Lockheed Martin, right? I mean, you might as well be a government employee. And but then you find a sense of pride in what you're doing, and like, you know, to tap into your machinist, nerd and passion there. Like, we would take a 20-foot billet of aluminum and hog it out because we were making a cruise missile. Like, to hog that out, that is so much material. And like that fascination with the NC programming team, I was like, it looks like they're in a dark room playing video games all day long, but those guys are geniuses, right? And so for me, that was like that hook, or those chills, that was like, wow, we're really taking different personalities, different people, this creativity, and we're executing for this like sole mission of this program, and it was fascinating. One thing actually two things that I'm going to kind of blend that I heard from one of your keynotes recently is you talked about price, delivery, and quality, right? And how you have to really have all three of those nowadays to be a successful manufacturer and to really compete on the global scale. And then there's the aspect of taking all that and pushing technology. And you kind of encouraged in this keynote, you had encouraged these shops to take on the new MES project, or adopt AI, or adopt social media marketing, adopt a new ERP project. Even though those things are difficult, it pushes that envelope further. And I think you can kind of connect those to that three-tiered approach of success, of quality, delivery, and price, right? So I just want you to elaborate on that and your thoughts around that, that we were encouraging people to kind of take on that new innovation in the space.
Yeah, another incredible question or thought, Tristan. And it's not easy, honestly. And I think, again, I like to be fair to everyone out there, because for me to say something and for them to implement something are two completely different animals altogether.
It's tough. We're in that business. It is a hard thing to do.
It takes time, it takes resources, it takes money, it takes resilience, it takes failures, and then picking yourself back up again. It's not just me saying you should do it, and it's like, okay, I didn't know it existed, so I'll do it now. It's not it's not just an awareness thing. It is very much a dedication to the betterment of themselves, their factory, their people, and everything around them, right? And it's, again, almost one of those long-term ROIs. But it's important, right? If we're gonna truly sustain until the next 10, 20 years, adopting and adapting and appreciating these newer technologies that allow us to do more, to allow us to understand our machine shops better. We people ask me, I'm supposed to give a keynote on AI, and I feel so inferior on the topic itself. And I wonder oftentimes, do the people who only focus on AI often feel inferior because it's growing and changing so quickly? It's almost an unfair topic, because anything we talk about changes tomorrow because it's so freaking intelligent.
Yeah, right.
So while I will bring up the importance of AI, we don't know what the final. So there may not even be a final solution. It's just,
I don't think there's a final solution for sure.
No, it just keeps on changing, right? So, but we need to try. We need what AI, in my opinion, what AI will do the most for manufacturing is just truly help us understand the ins and outs of the gray area that we think we know right now, or even tribal knowledge from what's been going on. I've done interviews with people where companies, machine monitoring companies, have helped them better understand the uptime of their machine, the true uptime of their machine, not just guessing, to the point where they thought they needed to buy a new machine, but they were running at a certain percentage. Up that percentage, ended up buying the machine later, of course, but up that percentage to capitalize on what existed already, because that information didn't exist. And to answer the question, going back to the three tier, I'm looking at a meme right now, actually, that has a circle on it about those three tiers, right? And in the middle it says impossible. impossible to get all of those three. That's just not true anymore. And also we need to stop thinking like that. And I know it's hard. I know people out there are like, look, you can have a good price and you can have, a good lead time, but your quality is going to be low, right? Or you can have, low quality with good, quick lead time. Your price is going to be whatever it might be. The people to this day will still make that argument, that discussion, that I can't have all three. But the truth of the matter is we can, and we have to. Yeah. And the adaptation of modern technology allows us to have all three. If I have, let's say, for example, I have 4 people in a machine shop where I need to probably have 15, but skills shortage has reduced my people. And I take technology and allow those 4 people to be 15 people, which allows them to make more, which allows us to produce more. And ultimately, at the end of the day, even though we've taken these 4 people to produce like 15 people, I would make the discussion that a lot of that's going to be AI, automation, ERP, machine monitoring, things like this, which is actually going to free up their time from the dull, dirty, dangerous, and dainty, and allow themselves to get back to the creative things that they love already. So if they're getting back to the creative things, if we've adapted all this modern technology, we are actually able to supply time, cost, and quality all in one. And I think that's important, although it might be a fight and it's somewhat of a transition, and it's resilience and strength and dedication. It is the direction we need to go.
So you said something that again, the reason Tristan and I are doing this is because I think we're so passionate about it. And it's that I truly believe, and it goes back to the Stone Age, that there is a lack of awareness, even to some of the technologies that exist. I mean, I can think for myself of my previous job when I was frustrated on how we used Outlook for our team inbox. And it was like, things would get deleted. There was no tracking. And so there was a lack of awareness of there's 15 tools out there. And I think in manufacturing, there's probably challenges. And I want people to be challenged to say, when you have a problem or a struggle or a pain, go figure out what other solutions exist out there. Just do some exploratory research, because there probably is something. Then you have to do your business case analysis and say, does it make sense for me to spend the money and get this return? But there are so many possible solutions out there. It's a lack of awareness, and people need to take that initiative to better themselves, their lives, their business. 2 other things real quick is you mentioned something, and again, inside of manufacturing, it's how do we figure out all those little manual touches and automate them? A guy taking a piece of paper, a lady taking a piece of paper from one place to another, just to have that paper trail or that documentation. How do we automate that? And it's that lack of awareness that we've done it this way for 15 years, so we keep doing it that way. Like, look at your business in those lights and start trying to figure out, okay, where are we spending a little bit extra time that we don't need to? And then the last thing that I was just smiling about when y'all were talking about AI, there's this new term, it's agentic AI, and it's like the first time I saw it, I probably mispronounced it because I'm still learning, but it's like agents doing work for you. And again, when we talk about automating the manual, I'm like, well, that's the next AI trend that we're going to start seeing. My question, to kind of flip it all around full circle for you, Tony, is, in manufacturing, what's outside of AI, like what's the big trend that you see with the biggest impact for businesses moving forward? Maybe it's a type of tooling, maybe it's in like a technology tool like an MES. Like, what do you see biggest impact for the future of manufacturing?
Ooh, I get asked that question sometimes, Michael, and I honestly don't know the answer, because I think a lot of machine shops are definitely, a small shop compared to a medium shop, compared to a large shop like your Lockheed's, Tristan, are going to have a different answer for this question. And if it's okay with you, I'd actually like to step back for a second and talk about the American Precision Museum, which is the Silicon Valley of a couple hundred years ago. And when I walked through there, I saw some of the, let's say, micron precision done on manual machines from hundreds of years ago. When we go back to that you can have it that way, it's just going to take time to do it, to how we modernize. And you mentioned how traditional and Stone Age, and again, don't worry, I'm going to bring this full circle, I promise you. But Stone Age to where can we make the biggest changes now? Seeing things like that, the original Silicon Valley, the precision that was done there, the quality that was done there, I think about the first major change that I think a modern shop from today can do based on a traditional shop that can still make incredibly tight tolerance parts is the adoption of the technology not the hardware, but the software side of things. So whether we're calling it AI, whether we're calling it ERP, machine monitoring, I think in our minds, most machine shops know how to make things with our hands. We know how to make things. We know how to run a machine. We know when that machine is purring correctly and the chips are in C's and 9s with a bit of blue on them to put in the material, you know that you're making that right cut. It purrs for you, whether it's on a CNC or a manual machine. We're getting real creative with our CAD systems now. Our designing is becoming better, much, much better. We don't have to have 3 or 4 different machines making one part. Okay, now we're stepping into a 3+1, 3+2, a full 5-axis machine, or even more so, like your Boomotex out there with your 8, 9, 10, axis machines out there that can do done in ones quite easily. We have machine shops out there who have 100 3-axis machines because they were inexpensive and did what they were supposed to do day in and day out, repeated, right? But on those 100 machines, it takes 5 of those machines to make one part as I flip it and flip it and flip it and flip it, unless I've gotten really good at tabs and I can maybe squeeze under there, pop the thing off, do a little deburring, right? And then but even then you're doing like a 3+2 action in a lot of times. So these 3-axis machining centers, facilities, these houses of machining centers of 3-axis, they're adapting a trunnion. So instead of getting rid of all the machines and saying I need to start fresh with 5-axis machines, which if you had infinite amount of money, you would, of course, but nobody has that. You adopt a trunnion on as many machines as you can, and you start doing this, right? And this is the basics of how to constantly improve instead of saying, and even before that, we can do quick change systems where we're taking our vices and putting it within a couple thou right back into the same spot as we're doing measuring, right? Or some of your probes out there can do measuring inside the system, or some of your care and engineering can figure out what's going on while in action and machining. To me, at the end of the day, everyone's going to have their own answer to this question, but I think ultimately the umbrella of it is the software side of things to help us understand, and I kind of said this in a previous question, but helps us truly understand all the gray areas that are happening in our shop. And we need to stop thinking about, does it give me an immediate ROI? Because it's not going to be a light switch, and it's not going to be like making a part where that part, I ship it and it immediately puts money in my pocket. What it's going to do in the long term is ultimately reduce cycle times, create better profitability, understand how to quote better, understand where your losses are, your margins are, understand ultimately how you mentioned paper being hand delivered. Remove the paper. We don't need it anymore. I don't care what we don't need that. Go paperless. But all of these things, okay. I'm probably going to say something I shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. Yeah, thanks for that, Tristan. I'm of the generation that I saw pretty much the evolution of a lot of technology. I mean, I was in high school with my pager, and I never had money to pay for it, so I only just had a battery in it to look cool. But I had a pager. It never actually went off. Maybe like one month out of a year I could afford to pay for it. And we would message each other with codes, right, of what, and then you put a quarter in a payphone and, hey, how you doing, or you do a collect call. I like to make a collect call, and you say the thing real quick, and then they say, I don't want the collect call, so you say what you need, right? And these were all games we played. Then I saw the big car phones come into play, and these people walk around these giant phones that cost $75 a minute to use. And then I saw the flip phones, and then I remember the first smartphone, the adaptation of the smartphone, the adaptation of all this new technology. And although I'm talking about the evolution of a phone because most people can relate to that, there was an evolution of all things at this time, all things technology-wise. So here's the part I probably shouldn't say. There's a generation above me, because I'm 46 years old at the moment, that probably, in likelihood, if we're going to do percentages, even though I've visited some really, really amazing machine shops with owners that are 20 years old, 22 years old, 24 years old. Kudos to you folks out there. Keep doing your amazing work. But I would say as a majority rule, because I'm big on statistics, anyone, this day and age, if you have a 1% chance of having a discussion with someone, you can go to Google, you can go to AI, and I can argue that 1% pretty well because I have the ability to do so, but it doesn't make it the majority rule. So I like to go with statistics and majority rule. I would say as a majority rule, the majority of business owners in manufacturing right now sit into that 50 to 70-year-old range, right, as a general rule. And I would say that that range is just outside of embracing a lot of the technologies that are out there right now. I know my parents are slow to adapt a modern cell phone and all of its capabilities and what it can do. So I think the real answer to this overall question, even though we can push and push and push to all this modern technology, is just to be open-minded, to trust the people around you, to source information from generations that might know better in these avenues, right? And not just be a business owner that owns and does what they want to do, but truly embrace everyone within your facility from every generation, accept opinions, and be brave enough to step into open possibilities of the unknown.
That's awesome.
I think you answered that fantastically when we're talking like we could machine things way back when, right? Just fine. And we could just like we can continue. I mean, there's nothing from a competitive differentiation standpoint that says your competitor can't do that, right? Because they can. Like that's the fact. And so it becomes kind of that technology utilization to figure out where your data is sitting so that you can do that better, right? And so I think that's a great point that you made there. And it's funny when we talk about that age group of these CEOs, these CIOs, these CFOs that we speak to on a daily basis. To your point, technology adoption may be a little bit, lagging there, but they still really understand business outcomes. And if you can tell them that, and it may not be a KPI, it just may be as pure as like, this machinist is, their quality of life gets better and I can prove it to you. Those business outcomes are how technology adoption happens and occurs out there. So I love your answer there. And really, I just have one last big question for you. It's not every day we get an Amazon best-selling author out here on the podcast. So you authored Building Your Dreams, A Journey of Riches. Share with the audience a snippet of the inspiration that goes into achieving, their dreams and goals that you kind of laid out in the book.
I meant to grab a book and actually read you a piece of it, but I thought that might be too boring. Well, hopefully not too boring. Hopefully people are inspired by it. So I'll tell you the story of just a real quick story of how this all came to be, Tristan, if that's okay. And
yeah,
and I've had quite a interesting life. I think every 10 years I become a new version of myself. When I was a teenager, I was a real asshole. I was in what the police called a gang. We didn't think of ourselves as a gang. We were a bunch of country boys growing up in the middle of nowhere, Powhatan, Virginia. And it was a bunch of us, yeah. But we just had like turmoil in our households, and we connected with each other and became brothers. And I guess we were troublemakers. I mean, we were. In my 20s, I think karma came back around and kicked my ass a little bit, and I went through a whole lot of turmoil there. I mean, viral pneumonia killed me. My best friend was killed. I was homeless for a little bit. My house burnt down. All of these things went on, and it gave me a lot of growth in my 30s. I started to get a bit more business acclimated. I drove down to Florida from Virginia, took on a job that eventually made me an international consultant and the vice president of a company. So I started traveling a bunch and seeing the world, not just through Discovery Channel or through my mind's eye, but through the truth and reality of seeing it firsthand. And I think that opened me up to a lot of opportunities to expand my mind and consciousness and understanding and compassion of everything around. And then as I got into my 40s, I'm now doing the media side of things. I wrote that book in about 2018, I want to say, and so I didn't quite make it to the media side yet. And you've already said the title, and it's about, you know, a journey of riches, building your dreams, and it's co-authored with 10 other people. And so the 10 other folks, including myself, we wrote kind of we wrote a chapter each, and it was a shortened story of the resilience and the courage and the honesty with ourselves, to never give up, to pursue the good in life, to pursue how beautiful this life can be, and in places, hopefully it inspires others to think past some of the difficulties and in their own lives, and maybe find a light, see a light. You know, I've said this before in another podcast, where a good friend of mine, a very, very good friend of mine, who's currently incredible, amazing, by the way, as a he went to jail a bunch of times, and then he started a nonprofit for people getting out of jail, and then he went to the University of Virginia and got a aerospace engineering degree, and then he worked for Rolls-Royce, and now he runs his own business in construction. The kid's amazing. But I remember him telling me one time when he was going in and out of jail, and I was trying to help him. He's like, when you're suffocating, when you're in the darkness, there is no light, and so the people trying to preach light to you is just annoying. I was like, shit. Okay, I need to find a different angle to inspire my buddy. So this book came about as I was backpacking through Bali, and I was just having a glass of wine at sunset, and a random stranger, we started chatting and started getting, you know, I'm not a surface level. How's your day? Great. How's the weather? Awesome. I'm more of a, let's dive in. Let's get to know each other. And so this conversation was going on, and unbeknownst to me, the publisher of this book, and I think this was book number 17, and I want to say 14 out of 17 up until that time. I think he's on 20 something now. 14 of 17 were #1 bestsellers on Amazon. So he does a really good job of creating a book that becomes the #1 bestseller. So he's listening on my story of some of what I just explained to you in super rapid form. And he's like, hey, I just heard part of your story. Would you want to co-author in this book? You know, here's the concept. Here's the idea. I'd love to learn more about you. And I was like, I've always been kind of a yes man, where if I've not done something, or if I'm scared of something, much like public speaking, which has terrified me, I'll say yes to it, because if I'm scared of it, I want to know why, and I want to pursue it, and I want to overcome it. So I said yes to this, and I was actually backpacking through the Himalayas while I was writing this book. And the last few paragraphs of the book, if someone reads it, I'm actually at a Buddhist hotel / monastery in the foothills of the Himalayas, and I'm writing about all my gratitude and joy and sharing it and finishing this thing up. And I look to my right, and this Buddhist is just in deep meditation and prayer, and I'm like, it's a beautiful life. We all live it a little bit differently. Let's appreciate each other for their journey. Let's honor each other for their journey. Let's realize that, you know, the truth that we see is from our perspective, but everyone has their own version of truth. And let's have compassion for as often as we can, because sometimes it can be frustrating, but as much compassion and patience as we can for all the humans out there, because we all have a different story and a different journey and a different situation in life. And everyone has a story to tell. I've realized if we ask enough questions, everyone's gone through something. Everyone has something that they would like to share. And so everyone can be a student, and everyone could be a teacher to everyone they meet, because we can absorb and listen, and we can also share. And I think that's important to understand. I like to be a listener, but when people ask me questions like you just have, I'm happy to share as well.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. One, Bali, love it. Been there, love it. Anyone who hasn't gone to Bali, just do it. Michael, you need to go.
I'm not. I need a 3-week vacation like Tristan.
You got to go, bro. To Tony, thank you so much for coming on the show. You know, this is Water Cooler Talks, episode 17. You know, everybody grab your H2O and really just hope you enjoyed the show, man. Cheers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. Great questions, great host, great podcast. Wishing you guys continued success in your personal lives and business lives. Truly incredible.
You the same.
Thanks,
appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk soon.